Welcome to another episode of the Lead Gen Hustler podcast, where we dive into the stories and strategies of the most successful players in the lead gen space. Today, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Abraham, who is an entrepreneurial force behind Leadbird, a B2B pay-per-lead lead generation agency known for its impressive performance model and a seven-figure annual run rate with over 75 clients and some impressive names on the roster like Automation Anywhere and Palo Alto. And Nick's journey doesn't stop there. He's also the mastermind behind multiple SaaS companies, achieving a ton of success in the SaaS space with over 5,000 customers at Scrubby. And his unique perspective on lead gen and the SaaS development space has positioned him as an expert leader in the industry. So join us today as we're going to uncover insights, strategies, and experiences that have shaped Nick's journey to be able to take him through to success. Nick, thank you so much for joining me. I've known you for a few years. So maybe to kick off, do you want to tell the people what you do and where you are based?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that was a really great intro. I love that.
Thank
Like
you.
Noah said, I'm the founder at Leadbird, run over about 109 active clients at our agency. We built 4 to 5 different tools in the sales tech space that serve roughly about 8,000 customers monthly. Um, like Noah mentioned, we're at a multi-seven-figure run rate, completely bootstrapped and based out of Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas, and completely bootstrapped as well. We have to pick up on that. That's awesome. That's really, really crazy. So yeah, Nick, I've known you for probably a few years now. And in that time, I've had an agency and actually moved out of it, but you've kept going no matter what. And I feel like that's super interesting. And I want to break that down. So maybe we can kick off with just understanding like the early days of your journey. So you're quite far into your journey right now. How many years into the journey are you in?
It's been roughly about 3 to 4 years. And I don't really consider too much of the early years when
Mm.
really just doing that discovery, trying to figure out, how to really build the operations and solve our customers' problems of lead gen.
And then how many people are you at now? And like, what does it look like from then to now?
Yeah, 100 clients. Our team is pretty diverse. On just Leadbird, we're about a 10 to 11. And then across all our other companies in the SaaS space, we're probably closer to like 15 to 20. So
Okay.
pretty lean team that we built, but absolutely love it.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, so, okay, let's go back. I want to go back to when it all started with Leadbird. Like, how did you get into the space? Like, just talk me through that because it'd be awesome to break that down.
Yeah, it's actually hilarious. So, I was just like any other like college kid and I wanted to start an agency because that's what all the cool kids are doing on Instagram, bought a couple courses and this agency was growing Instagram pages and I had success in growing an Instagram page to like 75,000 followers. So I was like, hey, like I'm gonna start doing this for other people. I chose the medical space for some odd reason. I was like, I'm gonna work with plastic surgeons and grow their pages. And I did all the things that you shouldn't do when you start a business, right? When I filed the LLC, I built a fancy dancy website. I, posted about it on my personal Instagram profile. And then I just sat there and I was like, okay, like when do the clients start coming to me? Right. And I just sat there and nothing was happening. And so then I really had to figure out like, okay, I did all the stuff to make myself seem like an entrepreneur, but like now
Yeah.
it's like time to actually go make money and build a business, right? And that's whenever I was just kind of Googling like how to get clients. And that took me down the rabbit hole of learning outbound sales. Got really good at it. We did emails a lot different back then. We're using our own servers. I was going on Upwork and paying people to do that and kind of going through all the different rabbit holes of cold emailing. And then really just doing cold calls as well. And we were able to semi grow that agency. The margins were terrible. First ever agency I ever
Mm-hmm.
built. It completely failed, definitely. But I was able to master cold emailing in that front and sales in that front as well. We were signing and onboarding probably anywhere from like 10 to 15 clients a month. It was very low ticket subscription that we were selling for Instagram management.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the start of the journey. And once I realized that I really don't like doing what I'm doing on the Instagram growth side,
Mm.
I had a couple friends that I met along the way that were kind of like, hey, you're doing pretty good with like signing and closing and doing the lead gen side of things. You think you can do this for us? And I was like, hey, let me give it a shot. And that's where Leadbird was kind of born.
So organically, like it organically grew out of just demand, helping your individuals around you to be able to show them how you were doing lead gen. And That's awesome. So what were you doing internally, essentially, like you said, on your own servers, cold calls, and a mixture of different activities that you thought you could actually showcase to these individuals and then enable them? And that's how that kind of took on a life of its own and Leadbird was born?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually funny. Like I remember the first ever client I closed through cold email. It was like this dermatologist, and she's a pretty big dermatologist in the States. And I remember she was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to sign up. Can you go ahead and send over a contract?" And I was like, "Oh shit, like a contract? Like I don't have that." And so I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Let me go ahead and get this contract over. I'll have my assistant send this over." And then hopped off, and I'm like scrambling, like how to make a contract and like finding
No
all these
chat
websites to kind
GPT
of go through that.
in those days as
Yeah.
well.
And so yeah,
Nice.
it was hilarious. But yeah, that was kind of the process back then.
That's awesome. And then, okay, cool. So then as an outcome of that, Leadbird was born. And then how did you go from there to be able to start to formalize your offer and actually, move into creating, I guess, your first kind of lead paper? Was it paper lead to start off with, or was it a different type of service
Yeah.
offering?
So yeah, so when we first started, we did pay per meeting.
Paper
Actually, no,
meeting,
when we
yeah.
first started, we did retainers. And when
Okay.
we did retainers, the issue I saw was, we didn't have a lot of like the customer journey mapped out. I was pretty much doing everything from A to Z. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the greatest experience. Results were semi there, but churn was super hard to mitigate whenever I was running a retainer model. And so then I was like, okay, let me move into a pay per appointment model. And
Mm-hmm.
and that was great. Once we got to about 20 clients, it became kind of like an operational mess just because you're balancing 10 different calendars for all your different clients, and you're managing these conversations in the inbox and trying to find times that they're available and kind of in a way be like an assistant and kind of be the middleman to get it on their calendar, and that becomes really messy, specifically when you're doing it yourself and managing like 20 people. So then we shifted into this new model called the paper meeting ready lead. and
Mm-hmm.
and what this is we're forwarding over the email conversations that we're having with leads for our clients, and we're basically sending them over whenever they show interest and they're wanting to get on a call. So think of it more of like
Qualified
think of
meetings.
yeah, and so we're not really responsible for actually setting the meeting for our
Yeah.
clients, but like our clients, and we do this for our own entire sales process, the same way we generate leads for our clients, same way we do it for ourselves. Like our closers, our account executives, they're setting appointments at roughly 80% from leads we
Yeah.
generate. And so, I found that to be a lot more scalable solution rather than actually setting the meetings for the clients individually.
Right. So in terms of how that model works, so yeah, just talk me through that. So essentially you'll do the campaigns for them, and then following that, manage all of the replies. And at the point of there being intent, we'll then move that forwards, which intent is whatever the action or end goal is that they've derived. And then that
Yeah.
they then go and set that up.
Yeah, we have like a really cool like forwarding mechanism, and we're
Okay.
able to forward it. Like it has the entire email conversation, and it has all the leads details, their company information, maybe their direct number, their LinkedIn profile, all those kind of things. And then they're able to just click to reply. And you'll see this on our website, but like yeah, they
Yeah.
just click to reply, and then they can take over the conversation from there. And like setting meetings is pretty easy whenever the lead's like, hey, I'm available on December 3rd, and I'm available also on December 4th. Because at that
Yeah.
point, all you got to do is send over an invite. Say, hey, awesome, I sent over an invite for December 4th. Let me know if we need to adjust the time. If not, here's my calendar link, and you can find a time for yourself. And
That's
appointment set
awesome.
rate's pretty high from that model.
That's crazy. I see at the moment there's a lot of individuals who are getting started and diving into the performance model, but obviously there's always the biggest challenge of having a visibility into your roadmap and the number of clients that you have in terms of. For me, back in the day when I had an agency, there was my accountant going, well, if they're not signed in, how is that a client? So obviously it is, but I'd love to be able to understand from your perspective in terms of like creating that visibility. How does that look, and what were your thoughts when going into this kind of performance model? Because obviously it's a little bit different to having retainers. They're not secured and they're not tied into any contract. So what was the thought process there, and how do you kind of combat that in terms of having that visibility that you are forecasting on clients for later down the line?
Yeah, so and I'm super grateful that we started this process early, and we built a lot of reporting and data tracking systems and methods. And so, we've pretty much worked with every client in every industry, targeting with every offer in every due market, right? And so we can see these previous results and make an estimate. Like, if I'm taking on a client that sells MSP, which is like an IT solution kind of thing, I know that my email to lead ratio, so the amount of emails I have to send to generate a singular lead, is probably gonna be closer to like 5 to 10,000, because it's a very saturated offer and something that not a lot of people find too attractive. And so, whenever we bring on clients, we have kind of a blacklist of industries we won't touch because we can't get solid results for. And so, and we know like what is our deliverable on a monthly basis of how many emails we're going to send. We have per industry, per offer averages for what the email to lead ratio is. And so for us, it's very easy to predictably say, okay, we have this client, they do, let's say, pay per lead gen, right?
Yeah.
We've worked with 4 other people that have done that. They've targeted all these industries. Their blended average for their email to lead ratio is 1 lead per every 600 emails we send. If we send 7,000 emails, or let's say 6,000 emails for them for the sake of math, and we're getting 1 per every 600, we know that we're going to get them 10 leads.
Yeah.
And if we're billing them $300 per lead, we know that at the end of the day, this client is going to bring $3,000 in monthly revenue for us.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how we're able to do the forecasting and understand that process.
And then over a period of time, having measured the client growth, you understand how many clients you're bringing on an average to be able to start to predict future and, lifetime value and all of those types of things. Is that what you would do as well, to be able to kind of
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much how our entire financial modeling works in a nutshell.
Awesome. And yeah, systems. You are the system wizard and the guy for it. If you look anywhere online, I think you even recently did a webinar on systems. So yeah, just talk to me a little bit about the systems and how they've kind of changed from the initial. And maybe just before we jump into that, have you exclusively done email, or did you take into account other channels within the offering to be able to enable your clients, just so that's clear as well?
Yeah, so when we first started, we tried to do like all the channels, right? So we did email, cold calling, and LinkedIn. And then when you're first starting out, you don't have your process built out, you're still kind of learning things as you go. Doing a million different things is the wrong way to go, right? Because you just won't have the processes built out to an extremely detailed level. And so the client is going to suffer because of that. And so we noticed that. And I saw the channel that we got the most results and was the most scalable at that time was email. And so I said, okay, let's cut out LinkedIn, let's cut out cold calling, let's strictly do email. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we thought about it. I think, going into 2024, our goal is to start increasing the LTV across all of our clients. And the best way to do that is to start introducing new channels. And even with like what's happening in the email space, I think it's gonna get more competitive with all the people joining in with great tools like Smart Lead and Instantly. I think you have to start diversifying your revenue from just one singular service and one singular channel. If you want to increase the LTV and just be on top of stuff whenever things start to break. Specifically, if you're running on performance, if you're on retainer, then that revenue is going to come. But like, hey, in February, what if Google decides that they're going to figure out a way to just stop all cold emails? There's always going to be ways to innovate and make sure you stay out of that space or in that situation. But let's say you don't move fast enough, then guess what? Your revenue is going to be down 80% if you're working completely on performance. So you just got to figure out how to like diversify, so you're not just like I guess like
putting your eggs in one basket, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how like this is also quite interesting to be able to share. Obviously there's agency owners which start and they stop, like I mentioned before, I had that agency, and there's trends which occur. LinkedIn went from being able to send 100 connections per day to 20 to significantly less to now having limiting messaging on the connection request. And these things are evolving. And you're talking about longevity and like the lifetime value of clients adding value to enable them to be able to consistently create those momentum on those meetings books and actually create that. How have you always continued? Have you had to pivot? Have there been challenges that you've had to overcome? And maybe like talk me through a couple of those to be able to understand how you've kept going, because it's super impressive. Whenever I check back on you, I see you're still smashing it and taking over. So yeah, how have you overcome those challenges and kept going?
Yeah, so Honestly, it was a lot easier back in the day when you're at a smaller client size because it's easier to pivot from like your systems, your operations because they're still pretty new.
Hmm.
Right now, we have noticed that we move a little bit slower just having over 100 clients. It's hard to kind of just reboot our entire systems. And so, we kind of now take a look at what's happening. We always have backup plans in place, but we're always like vividly testing things before we actually implement them across the business, right? So like one thing and the other thing too is like I think we have a phenomenal CTO. I think we have a phenomenal development team, and they're pretty much able to automate anything. They're pretty much able to solve for all these random edge cases of like,
Yeah.
okay, email deliverability went down. Let's figure out a solution on how to make it better. Even with like LinkedIn, like, we've built applications that allow us to send messages to people who haven't even accepted the connection request, And so it's like we found all these little workarounds. We figured out how to automate voice notes. We figured out all these tiny things to just kind of make it easier to pivot if needed. But we
Yeah.
only pivot if it's completely established that what we're doing is not working.
Yeah.
And then we'll slowly introduce it.
That's awesome. And then obviously for someone just getting started, they don't have that ability to be able to, implement and try all these different unique ways to approach pivoting when challenges come up. So I'd love to just understand, how did you, when you did get started, obviously I'd love to go later on in the journey, but like in the earlier days, move towards thinking about not having yourself fulfill the service offering and move to enabling you to build out that initial team? And what did that look like? So it didn't sit on you and you could start to be able to operationalize and have people to be able to deliver across your service and maintain the standard that you set. So how did you approach that?
Yeah, so I would say like the biggest thing you could do to kind of remove yourself from fulfillment as like, an agency that's starting to grow, it's all like everything comes back to the data. Like you have to build a data warehouse and track everything that you do, right? When it comes to like actual fulfillment, campaign results, industry that they're targeting, the copy you're writing, the lead list targeting that you chose, all those type of things. Because once you're a year, 2 years down the road, you have all this data to look back onto, and you can make way more intelligent decisions. I think a lot of the agency owners that are jumping into the space right now, they work off of a gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
And hey, you might get it right once or twice, but consistently over a year period, you're going to make the wrong decisions. And so I think that's what helped and enabled us to grow so quick. Is like we just got really granular with tracking all kinds of campaign results and data, and
Yeah.
being able to build like a baseline KPI to kind of gauge client campaigns and kind of use that as a rubric for our team members, right? So like, like I mentioned earlier, we track the email to lead ratio. And so,
Yeah.
they can write the copy, they can build a lead list, and they know what their goal should be for that email to lead ratio because they've seen 4 other clients that we've had in the past and what, their email lead ratio is. And they know immediately, okay, hey, if I launch this campaign and I look at it in 14 days and that email to lead ratio isn't within the realm of our past clients, something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so let me go in and fix it. And so, being able to build like KPIs, I guess, for your team to depend on when it comes to client fulfillment, I think is the biggest thing. But I think it has to be based off of previous data rather than just a gut feeling.
That's insane. That's like the right way to be able to go about it. And like how did you go about doing that? Was that just initially you setting up the first system and then like bringing in the first individual to learn off of those benchmarks and try to achieve the same level of results on the campaigns? Or did you go, I need someone to generate copy to help on the copy side, I need someone to build out the searches to be able to create the lists that are validated to launch a campaign? Like,
Yeah.
how did you first bring that to life to be able to start to delegate some of those actions and make that into
Yeah.
motion?
So that's another thing I think a lot of agency owners mess up in the beginning is they try so hard to delegate when they first start out, right? Before they really understand the role and really understand all the tiny nuances that can just pop up on them. And this is a mistake that I made. I hated building lead list. I hated writing copy. I hated all these things. And so I would hire people, they would come into a really loosely broken system.
Yeah.
At that point we're bootstrapping, so they may not have been the absolute best talent. Just so many issues that come up. And so, what I would recommend, or what I wish I did starting out, was take care of doing everything on the fulfillment end. Write the copy, build the lead list, scrape the leads, manage the inbox, manage the client relationship, do the onboarding calls. And when you start doing this, you just need to get good at reporting it, right?
Yep.
Create the SOPs, right? On like things that you know are going to be here for over a year, 2 years, not the things that you know are going to change all the time. And when that happens, you can start to slowly delegate these things out, right? I think the first, like, and I think when it comes to campaign strategy, that's like one of the last things you want to delegate. The
Yeah.
things you want to delegate are things like scraping leads, because that's like something that anybody could do, and it's just clicking buttons, right?
Yeah.
Uploading them into Smart Lead or Instantly or whatever it may be, right? But like the strategy is the thing that you need to hold on to, and you need to measure and track and record up until you get 100 clients. Like I'm still doing a lot of campaign work. I took
Yeah.
a little break from doing campaign work, and truthfully, like our results went down. And so now I'm going back in and I'm getting way more granular of like how to like make it to where it's foolproof.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. And in terms of like key things to track, obviously, I'm not going to get you to list everything out, but from the get-go, what type of end metrics do you think people should be focusing on to ensure that they understand the right indicators to look at? Because obviously open rates skewed these days, and you should focus later down the line. What do you think that is important to look at to monitor that success and understand whether things are going well or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So and this is something that it took me a while to understand, like what metrics to look at, right? Because open rates, like you said, kind of skewed. If you look at reply rates, it's also not the best metric, because like, okay, is the reply rates all tracking? Like some sequencers, they'll add the out of offices to
Yeah,
the
all
to
the
the reply rate.
unsubscribes can't
But
be
that's
detected. Yeah.
exactly, and so like there's a whole bunch of things like that. But what I like to look at is really three things. It's it comes down to how many emails did we send, the sentiment of responses. So we track like how many people are requesting info, how many people are telling us to remove them from the list, how many people are just saying they're not interested, how many people are wanting to hop on a call, how many people are telling us to reach out to another department, how many people are telling us to reach back out in a later time. Like these are all things that we track. This is like what we call sentiment. And so
That's
we're tracking
awesome.
those. Yeah, so those are the metrics that we check right there. And then the last thing is just the email to lead ratio, right? How many emails are we sending to generate and convert a lead? And so, yeah, if you can kind of look at those numbers and you average those out across all your clients, you can really create really good KPIs that can kind of just be like your North Star when running campaigns.
That's awesome. And what do you consider a lead? As like when you're tracking emails to leads as an end product?
Yeah, so for ours, it's our meeting ready lead.
Yep.
So it's like
Okay.
someone who shows interest and then wants to also hop on a call. And so
Nice.
that's kind of
Nice.
like our North Star metric.
Nice. Okay. And then in terms of like the sequences itself, so like what does that look like? Do you do like a 3-step sequence? Do you add images? Do you not? Is that a big no-no? Because I love to add a GIF on email 3, but I know that people like deliverability. But yeah, I'd love to hear about your approach to how you're actually approaching to build out those campaigns and the process there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people overcomplicate the campaign creation process. Like if you can hit the fundamentals, and at the end of the day, it's all about the offer, right? Like if you have the right offer that's positioned the right way and it's really value driven, like you can really put whatever you want in the email. Like our best performing campaign was given to our client. Their offer is absolutely insane, and we probably do over 100 leads a month from them, and it kind of breaks all the rules of a typical cold email campaign. Like the first email is probably like 5 paragraphs long, but the offer is so good for the market that they sell to. And so it's able to convert like crazy. But to answer your question, I would say for most clients, we're doing a 4-step sequence, plain text. We're keeping it, probably like 3 to 4 sentences max, super simple, super direct, very conversational. And then we try to do some AI personalization through quick lines. And that's really about it. One thing I would say though is another thing I see a lot of people do right now is like they're trying to create these overly complex, like it's like they're trying to use these tools to like pull in all these crazy data points
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But like if you really look at it, if you're doing a pretty big campaign and you look at, and most people won't analyze every single like actual true email that's being sent out for the lead, a lot of times there's a lot more room for error. And so this is something that we try to do, and I try to teach my team on how to do. And just a lot more room for error. And so we try
Yeah.
to
So are
keep
you
it as
talking
simple as we
about
can and be as direct as we can.
nice, nice. And are you talking about like in terms of room for error, like variables and things like that that can get kind of slipped through? I've
Hmm.
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
That's awesome. That's really really cool. And yeah, I'm just interested out of curiosity. Is there anything which you would say where like this approach doesn't work for a client? For example, let's take a company which is doing account based outreach, and they have 100 companies that they can go against their TAM. Would something like and like these are just companies in a specific region, a specific state. There's 100 of them, and typically they would have followed a kind of LinkedIn, email, and phone cadence with SDRs and account executives, doing these manual steps. Would something like the scaled email, would that apply and work for that use case? Or are there instances where these types of things don't work? Or yeah, do you see that?
Yeah. So we avoid, I mean, not avoid, but we'll just let clients know that like if they come with a sales call and they want to do an ABM approach, we'll probably turn them down.
Yeah.
Because I really don't think the scaled out like email automation like that we do, the way we work it, works for an ABM approach. Like you said, like I think when you do an ABM approach, you need to choose a specific context to reach out to at those companies. And then you just got to be like crafty with it, and it's more about being multi-channel and being a lot more in depth with it. And I think an ABM approach is great, but I think for most companies that it may not be the best, specifically if you haven't had previous success doing it. I think it's more for like, if your TAM is super small,
Mm,
you have like you're selling a product that's, let's say, multi six figures, maybe more, or really more, and it's targeting more of like the corporate types. I
yeah.
think that's whenever an ABM approach is really well crafted. But like if you're targeting like mid-market companies, there's like millions of them. And so,
Yeah.
just kind of separating like that, I don't know. I don't really find that to be the most and best use of an outbound function. The other thing a lot of people don't realize is that like, if I ask you, Noah, like, do you remember any of the cold emails you got last week? You'd probably
Uh,
tell me no shot, and
no
that's the same
shot.
with me. And so like, and I think a lot of clients get this misconception of like, if we reach out to this person once, like we can't reach out again, right? Like
Yeah.
if they told us no last week, they're gonna tell us no again today, right? And so it's like, you know, you can keep reusing your lead list and keep
Mm.
hitting them with new messaging, new offers, and kind of going that way because they're not going to remember you. There's no chance, right? And so that's like one thing that like we like to keep in our mind.
No, that's super interesting. And I guess it kind of leads into a couple of areas. There's obviously verticals. Are there any like, verticals which you would recommend people to get started in? I've heard people saying recently some really interesting ones on a couple of podcasts. So yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that because obviously there's things where this is relevant and this is good for a business, but then there's these verticals where they're a little bit more saturated, and like we spoke on the ABM side, sometimes it isn't as relevant. So yeah, like verticals and types of customers, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, we don't have like industries that we specifically target. I think there's industries that we try to avoid, right? And
Yeah.
like types of businesses that we try to avoid. I'll give you an example, right? If we have a Facebook ads agency and let's say it's run by like a 20-year-old and it's just him,
Mm,
and he's targeting e-commerce brands, probably going to tell him, hey, this isn't going to work because there's no shot that you get
yeah.
really good results in e-commerce for a very new agency that probably doesn't have established offer or good case studies. But I think cold email works for anyone in B2B, but there are just some industries where it's harder to get the results that you
Mm,
want. I mentioned MSPs before. I think that's a good one. People that are targeting IT leaders, I think that's a hard one. I think most IT leaders don't like to be sold to and pitched to, and they don't like cold emails. So
yeah.
it's very hard to break into those channels via outbound on the cold email front. And I'm trying to think of like the other ones. And then there's this one type, and I find this hilarious. There's like the business coach that really hasn't done anything in their life outside of being a business coach. And those are like the clients like we just avoid, right? Because they have no like real background and like their offer is like we'll increase their profits by 20% or increase their revenue by 20%. And it's like, how? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll implement our hidden technique. And it's like you haven't really accomplished anything outside of being a business coach. And now you're gonna teach others on how to grow a business. Like it just doesn't really make much sense. And so we avoid those types as well. But yeah, they're like, to answer your question, yeah, we don't target a specific industry. We work with anyone in B2B. We
Yeah.
just have the types of industries we try to avoid, and those are
Yeah.
some of them.
That's awesome. And then, yeah, and then you're just tracking everything. So you have all of that backed up. And I'm sure you have your own platforms internally built out to man all of that. All right.
Mhm.
Wild question. You were to start again today. You start from scratch. You've got a one-page card landing page. There is today. That's the only way you're going to do it. And you're going to also jump in and go after an industry. What are you going to pick? Like, what would be the industry you'd approach today if you had to start from scratch?
Yeah, if I had to go from scratch, what I would do is, and the entire goal is signing clients. Like I wouldn't choose a specific industry. I would choose multiple industries and then
Yep,
create multiple angles that are specific to them. And then I'm doing what we're doing right now, pitching performance.
yep,
I wouldn't charge them a setup fee. I'd ask them to cover maybe the tech cost. And then my entire goal here is to get them results, capture the results, get them a recorded video testimonial, and then putting it right back on the landing page and rinse and
yep.
repeating until I have 20. And then once I have 20, that's whenever I'm going to say, okay, I'm established. I know what I'm doing. I have a good process and I can hire a team. Now let's go charge the big bucks and let's go hard at this. I think a lot of lead gen agencies, the reason why they suffer is one, they take on the clients that they know they shouldn't be taking,
Hmm.
and in the industries that they can't get results for. And the second would be just because they don't have enough social proof. There's literally thousands of us in the lead gen space,
Hmm.
right? But what separates us from others? And it's, if you go on our website, we have a 9-minute VSL
Which
with
is very
tons of
well
social proof.
edited as well.
Yeah, and then we have on our website as well, like almost 20 video testimonials with different clients in all different industries and spaces that we're working
Yeah,
on, and we're only going to continue adding to that. And so it's like, you hit our G2, like we have I think a 5 out of 5 or 4.9 out of 5. It's like we have a very good brand and reputation in this space, and that only accelerates your sales. It
yeah,
only, it decreases your sales cycle, right? Like it
yeah,
makes it so much less, because like when you cold email someone, it's all about trust. They
yeah.
have to know that you could deliver, and like, who's going to say no to a pay per lead model when they see 20 other people that they successfully delivered for and see great reviews? Like you're just not going to say no on that sales call.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And how did you go about? Because obviously, yeah, you have a big audience now on Twitter. You've gone and you have upwards of I think like 30,000 individuals that are following you in the space, which is awesome. And then across LinkedIn and as well, you're big out there. And if you just Google your name, there's tons that comes up now. How did you go about building your brand? Was that just yourself just consistently grinding, or like what did that look like to be able to get to that point where people do trust you and you can get that type of traffic and audience to direct to places and help you across the sales process?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is the lead gen space. A lot of people aren't innovating. They're just looking at like my content, they look at some of the other guys' content, and they just copy it. And
Mm,
if you copy it and you can get results, obviously, but when you document it, it doesn't really break the market like that. Like no one, like they've seen the same thing 10 times. Like, well, why would
yeah,
they want to follow you? They saw this from me 6 months ago, right? So I think for us, like how me specifically was able to kind of stand out was like when I started tweeting, no one was talking about automations. No one was talking about operations and how to use it in lead gen. And I think my content was like, it's not like we were doing anything crazy new, but we
yeah,
were just documenting it because like all the people that did do this stuff, they didn't document it. And I think by doing that, we just kind of built an audience of people that were super interested and saw this as like valuable stuff and innovative stuff in a way. And so that's kind of how we stood out. And that's still what we do today. And I think even if you're running lead gen agency or if you're running any kind of agency, like the best thing you could do is just document your growth, right? Show the ups, show the
mm,
downs, show what you're working on. It's only going to help you. Like when I get a cold email that's actually good, like the first thing I do is search the company up or search the person up, look them up on LinkedIn.
mm,
And if I just see a profile that isn't optimized, like that just turns me off, right? So it's like I want to see I want to see it all. Like I want to see like as much as I possibly can. I want to see them plastered on the internet and see all the results that they got, show that they're not afraid to show their face on the internet. Because to me, that just embodies trust, embodies confidence. And I think that's so important, specifically in the lead gen space.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're spot on. And in terms of like, in terms of standout tooling that like you've leveraged, obviously you've shown a ton, but like, what are you using at the moment outside of your own stuff to be able to, obviously we've mentioned instantly, smartly, these types of things. But yeah, like what standout tooling that you're using to be able to hack together and, you know, enable you to be more successful within your campaigns and just across the space? What are you seeing that is standing out? I've seen Clay is something recently,
Yeah.
but yeah, keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. And before I say that, like, I just want to point out as well, like, there's probably a good 50 to 100 other LinkedIn automation tools. But the reason why Expandy runs the market and rules the market is because you guys are so out there. There's so much
Yeah.
content, and it's like, if anyone's choosing a LinkedIn automation platform, they're gonna see you there. They're gonna
Yeah.
see Stefan there. They're gonna see all you guys there and think, okay, these guys are legit. They're so, and so it just makes it
It
much
just, yeah,
easier.
solidifies it.
Exactly. But to answer your question in terms of tech stack, we have a lot of custom tools that we use, but like I would say our business is built on Airtable, it's built on Notion, Zapier, Make. Those are like all like the project management, automation related things
Yeah.
that help run our stuff. We run all of our client communication through email. We use Front for that. It's a very good like email organization, customer support type tool. We run all of our internal team communication through Slack. In terms of like outbound efforts, obviously Smart Lead, that's our bread and butter. It's funny, I
Yep.
even built an email platform and did all the stuff that Smart Lead and Instantly did way before they came
Yeah,
out,
you were ahead of the
but just didn't
game.
understand, just didn't know how to run a development team, and so that's kind of what takes me away from SaaS. But yeah, we built our business on Smart Lead. I love the tool. It has the best API in the space. And then for data, we're using tons of different tools, but primarily using LinkedIn and Apollo. And
Uh-huh.
then for enrichment, we're using Better Contacts. For validation, we're using Link Verifier. For catch-all validation, we use Scrubby. For personalization, we use Quick Lines. And pulling leads from LinkedIn, we use Golden Leads. Like, that's pretty much our entire tech stack in a nutshell.
No, that's awesome. I'm sure that's going to be really helpful so for some people to be able to break down. And in terms of like the reporting aspect, when you're tracking like everything, where are you storing all of this? Is that an Airtable when you're just looking back and categorizing it? Because yeah, to be able to create benchmarks, store data, it's obviously you need to pull out every single email. So like, what's that look like, and how does that work?
Yeah, so we built, like, and I always tell everyone this whenever I get on calls. We put it all in Airtable, and I call my Airtable like my Mona Lisa. Like, it's like our like everything, like it's our entire business, put into like a nice little interface. And so yeah, like we're just using Airtable to store everything.
Nice, pouring it all in. Okay, cool, awesome. And yeah, just going back to maybe just talking a little bit more about like what we were speaking about before with if you would start again, what would you do? We touched on that. I'd love just to hear more about just the mindset and kind of the approach that you have to have when dealing with challenges and struggles that you face. So like, yeah, how have you, because I want to be able to show these lead gen agencies that are getting started that it's not all easy and you have to deal with those challenges. So yeah, like,
Yeah.
how have you maintained that mindset, and like what's the approach that you've taken and some of those challenges that have come up and how you kind of have overcome that and the struggles?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is that it really does take about like if you're joining the space to make quick money, it never works out. Like you
Mm,
have to be willing to not make money for like a year and a half, like true money, 2 years really. And really, like, for 2 years, you're not gonna make much. You're gonna be banging your head against the wall. You're gonna be putting out fires constantly. And if you're not willing to do that, you shouldn't join the space straight up, right? Like that's the truth of it. It's all about perseverance in this space. And I think the other thing too is like, a lot of people, they get scared of clients. They get scared of having to communicate with clients, and like have those tough conversations with clients. And it's all about being okay with having those tough conversations with clients, having those tough conversations with teammates, employees, and vendors and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people shy away from that. Like you
mm.
just like what I would say is like you just can't shy away from the pain because it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for 2 years, and then it starts to get a lot better from there, and then you'll start to see exponential growth. And I hope to see all these other lead gen agencies to get to the other side, to kind of really experience that. But if you can't bear the pain for 2 years, like it just makes it a lot harder to run. Like it really did take us like a minimum of 2 years before we caught our stride, before we had all our like things in place, before we could consistently deliver on the fulfillment. That's just how it is.
That's awesome. And like, yeah, it's super interesting. I can remember going outside my apartment, going down the lift, being like, I can see light at the end of the tunnel. I've had a meeting booked. There's going to be a client. It's going to ramp up. Have you had that? Like, and you have to just tell yourself, just keep going. You're going to get like through that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, how do you, if you have had that, just like tell yourself to continue? It's just mindset.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess kind of. I mean, like I remember when we first started out, like we had a kind of a high overhead for where we're at that point, and like seeing clients churn, and then thinking like, dang, like how am I gonna be able to afford to pay everyone at the end of the month? Like you just got to stick through it. I mean, like
Yeah.
you're always gonna find a way, like
Yeah.
right, like I remember at one point we're working on performance and we weren't making much because it was harder to like actually do the inbox management. I was picking up my phone and dialing these leads myself, right?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't having my team do it. Like, you're always just gonna have to find a way, right? And I think that's the best thing about performance. It's like, if things aren't looking good, pick up the phone, start dialing.
Yeah.
Reach out to those people on LinkedIn. Like do this stuff, the unscalable stuff so that you can make it to see tomorrow. I think like stuff like that is very important in this space, specifically when you're working on performance.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So yeah, you just went, and that leads nicely into like you said, like yeah, just picking up the phone, actually just taking it into your own hands, taking those matters to be able to move forwards. Are there any key things that you could come up with around like the acquisition and like retaining your clients? Because I think that would be also just really interesting to understand. So obviously we've spoken about acquisition, how you went through, you got your first individuals, and then how that evolved, video sales letters, having those testimonials. Yeah, like in terms of retention, like how do you retain people? Do you do check-ins on a bi or every few month basis? Like how do you keep that momentum, keep those relationships going with the clients, and just ensure that it's continuously moving and evolving?
Yeah, so we do a ton of stuff in there, on the retention side, and stuff we're like continuously adding to, continuously taking away from. But like what I would say is what you want to do is, or so at the end of the day, right? Like, you have to be super transparent with clients, right? And sometimes I hate to hear these kind of things, but like, you're not going to run cold email campaigns and get insane results for the client if they do not have a good offer. So at the end of the day, like a lot of the responsibility is to the clients. Like our responsibility as a lead gen agency is to take their product, their service, communicate it in a nice way, and put it into the inboxes of their ideal prospects, right? But at the end of the day, if what they're selling is not attractive, it's not something that their market actually wants, you're not going to get results, right? And so being able to communicate that to the client and helping them understand that, I think is step one. And I think past that, in terms of like continuous communication, it's very easy to, and this is something that we saw, it's very easy to communicate when you have like 10 to 20 clients. When you start to get to 100 clients and you have your CSMs managing those conversations, it gets a lot harder, right? And so being able to systemize that and being able to kind of, in a way, force conversations from your CSMs to your clients is very important. And so we do a couple of things. Obviously, we have our end of week reports that get automated and sent out to clients that kind of show their past 7 days performance. We do this thing called CSM touch points. And so we've mapped out our client journey, right? When a client gets their first lead, we want to congratulate them. When a client gets 10 leads with us, we want to congratulate them. When their campaign isn't performing well, we want to, kind of voice that out. 14 days after the campaign launches, we want to give them a quick video update. When their campaign hits 75% completion, we want to email them and let them know, hey, campaign's almost done. Here's the results so far. Here's what I think we need to do for the next batch. And then, all of those touch points I mentioned, we have like 30 other ones. Yeah. And what we've done is we've been able to, like, all of these are triggers, right? Yeah. And we're able to find these triggers and then draft these emails in our CSM's inbox. And so they know, okay, hey, client's campaign is almost a 75% complete. Let me, I have this drafted email out. Let me add my touch to it. Let me take this out and let's send it. Right. So you're forcing your CSMs to have continuous communication with your clients. And over communication is key in these places, right? In these standards. And in terms of like monthly check-in calls, we have noticed that the more check-in calls we have per month, the lower our churn is. But having check-in calls all the time isn't the most beneficial thing. And so, you have to find that nice balance of it. We try not to have like a repeated call on our CSM's calendar. Instead, what we do is in our CSM signature, there's a link for them to book a call whenever they want. So it's more of like an ad hoc basis when the client wants to speak to us on a check-in call, or if like, one of our touch points, we notice that, hey, the campaign is doing good. We might mention, hey, let's get a call booked in. Like we'll do things like that. We try to have a call with the client at least once every 45 to 60 days at a bare minimum. But like, I think getting repeated calls on the calendar isn't always the best motion. And I think if you do check-in calls, like there needs to be like a ongoing check-in call. There needs to be like a motive behind it.
Yep.
If it's just putting out a fire, it's putting out a fire. But for most sales organizations, it needs to be upselling clients, right? Or downselling them or cross-selling them or whatever it may be. And so like, you have to kind of identify that. Like at one point, we were just doing bi-weekly check-in calls. And honestly, it was a waste of time for the client. It was a waste of time for us. Like all we were doing is presenting a little slide deck to them, showing their performance. And it's like, this could be sent on a Loom video. There is no real motive behind this call. And, it's not helping either of us. And the way we figured this out was all of our clients would just keep pushing these calls back because they were just a waste of time for them. They just wouldn't show up. And then we realized, oh, wait, we need to have like an actual meaning behind these calls. It's going to have like a definite action behind it. So yeah.
That's super interesting. I also saw that. I started off with doing a 1-hour targeting session, a messaging session, workshops for everything, and then the reporting, and then Loom videos. Like, was the evolution of that? I never got to the level of triggers and customer journey, and that's super interesting. Just leading on, obviously, once you do scale up past 20 to 30 to now at the 100+ mark, how do you as an individual keep tabs on everything that is going on when it does come into ensuring that all campaigns are moving and everything's going forward? Do you have a bird's eye view to be able to see each account manager or CSM is assigned to X number of campaigns and this is the movement? Like, what does that reporting and how do you get insights into that at a high level to ensure it's all good?
Yeah, so we built like really good reporting and interfaces inside of Airtable to be able to identify when things aren't working the way we want them to. And so, we have a weekly call with all of our CSMs and we're basically able to create views for them to kind of be able to address and find low performing clients, low performing things, and kind of go through the motion of going through to fix it and assign tasks for themselves to work on it. So that's something that we've been kind of like changing up a lot and kind of finding out better processes and better ways around it. But yeah, we have a pretty good process in place. I think the other thing is that once you start to get past, like I think in the agency's journey, there's like that pre-service market fit phase, and then there's that service market fit phase, right? And when you're in that post-service market fit phase, like you need to hire the absolute best talent. You can't just hire the cheapest talent or somebody that just said they're willing to take the job, or like your sister's friend that just is looking for a side hustle. You need to find people with experience. You need to find people that are qualified and actually build out kind of like that HR recruiting department within your agency. Because at the end of the day, the agency is a people's business, right? It's a people business. And so, if you want to remove yourself from fulfillment, you need to have the best people to manage your clients accordingly. And if you don't do that, and I've made that mistake a lot, right? Like I've made some really bad hires in the past. It only will drag down your agency, right? So, you have to hire the best people that you can mesh with on a personal level and have the experience of doing what their role is for. And or at the end of the day, like, it's like a mutual beneficial relationship in terms of compensation, in terms of like all the benefits they get from you, like all these kind of things. So these are the things that really propel you. Like we're going through this phase right now, but I truly don't believe we'll ever get to 1,000 clients unless we build the absolute best culture and the best team within our agency.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right. Even at Expandy, it's all about the people to be able to get to the next level. And I guess on that paper meet model, how did you go about understanding the appropriate margins to be able to understand who to bring in? Like, how did you approach that?
Yeah, so I mean, like I ran the business mostly by myself and a couple of like VA type rules that were kind of like generalists within the agency. And like I said, right, like I'm just really meticulous when it comes to collecting data, and
Yeah.
I'm able to forecast off of that past data, right?
Mhm.
So like, I was able to have an email to lead ratio across all my clients of like, let's say like 800, right? So if I know that I'm generating on average across all my clients a lead per every 800 emails, okay, across all my clients, I know that if I want to hit, let's say, and let's do the math a little easier so I don't mess up the numbers. Let's say like my email to lead ratio was one email or one lead per every 1,000 emails that we send out, right? And let's say we're charging $100 per every lead. So,
Yep.
for every 1,000 emails I send, I make $100. That's the math right there, right? And so if my overhead is, let's say, $10,000, right? That means I need to be sending whatever that math is right there. I can't do
Yeah.
public math. But it's basically just kind of creating those averages and those ratios, and then you're able to kind of
Predict.
do the financial forecasting, and surprisingly it's pretty on target, and pretty consistent. So that's kind of like the stuff we did to kind of be able to do better forecasting.
That's awesome. That's really good. And then, yeah, essential individuals to be able to have in the team. Like, what does it look like? Obviously, now, and then what did it look like when you started to be able to take things off of you initially?
Yeah, when I first started out, I feel like I was hiring kind of anybody that was willing to take the role. And I just thought was like a cool person. And that works at a certain point, but at a certain point you really do need like experienced individuals, because that's
Mm,
only going to accelerate you. And they cost more, 100%. But
yep.
it's like you got to look at it less as like a cost factor and more of like, okay, I'm investing in this person, and this person's going to help me grow this way beyond my reach. And so that's kind of how we always viewed it. And so yeah, I don't know if I answered the question properly on
Yeah, so
that, but I
no,
kind of
like
lost track. But yeah,
yeah, so but like basically what you're saying essentially is that you pivoted from hiring someone to solve a task and actually invested in a person who could be brought in to be able to actually evolve and do a number of different activities. Yeah, I
hmm
guess. Um, yeah, and like was that like CSMs? Was that the first thing to handle accounts outside of
yeah,
yourself? Yeah.
yeah. So like what I would say, and I tell all my friends is that are just starting out, it's like when you first do start pre-service market fit phase, like you kind of have to find generalists, people that can kind
Yep.
of you know handle multiple roles, because you're not going to just hire someone to build lead lists, because they're only going to need to do maybe like 10 hours of work a week, right? And so you need them to do lead list building, you need them to do some of this like campaign maintenance stuff inside of Smart Lead. You might need them to do a whole bunch of random things here and there. And so
Yep.
that's kind of what I would say is like you hire a generalist, and then once you get to that point where you can hire someone that's a little bit more talented and has the past experience, you want to find someone that can kind of do a lot more specialized roles, and kind of separate it out that way. I would also say when it comes to hiring, the best thing that I learned from my coach is you need to identify the outcomes and attributes of the employee that you're hiring. So like, and you're able to once you create the, like, for great example, like our outcomes for our CSM, they need to be able to manage $50,000 in monthly recurring revenue, right? Within 6 months. They need to be able to manage 50 clients at any given time, right? And so once you map out like what are these outcomes and attributes of your dream CSM or dream role,
Mm,
on your calls with your candidates, you get to ask them the questions to see if they will ever be able to be the person that can hit those outcomes. And so you get to ask
nice.
them, hey, in your previous role, were you able to manage more than 10 clients, or were you given more than 10 clients? If they say, no, I only did 5 clients, it was really high touch, I immediately know like, hey, we're a little bit more low touch, and it like managing more than 10 clients, it's kind of like a muscle you have to build. So like, I'm probably not going to want to hire this person. I'm probably going to want to hire the person that has had that experience of managing, 20, 30, 50, 100 clients. Because I know that they'll just perform well, and they won't like, break under stress, or,
Yeah.
fold under pressure, things like that. And then the other thing too, I would say is every role, you need to build a pretty extensive assessment prior to hiring the person. Like you need to actually give them an assessment that you review and you can grade before you make that actual hire. Because
Mm,
a lot of people can look really good on an interview, and once again, it all comes back to data and analytics and looking at that stuff, right? I used to get on calls. I'd say, hey, that was a really cool guy. We had a great conversation.
yeah.
I think he's a good fit for the role, right? And that's because that person could just be an excellent communicator, excellent
Yeah.
speaker, but you never tested their critical thinking and how they would react to situations and stuff like that. And so if you don't give them the assessment, you'll find yourself kind of like relying a lot more on your gut feeling, which is never the best thing when it comes to like making predictable good decisions. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing that changed us when it came to recruiting.
So actually, yeah, implementing an assessment process. And you said something very interesting in that as well, which I picked out, was that you have a coach. So is that also something which has been super helpful for you to be able to just keep you in terms of just having someone to be able to speak to who's maybe later down the line or has a perspective outside of the box and isn't involved in the day to day? Because that was something with me that was really something which I like to look for. So yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've never worked for anyone outside of myself. I've always worked on startups myself. And some people see that as a good thing. I don't, right? Like you don't get to see the inner workings of a large business. And that's what I want to be. I want to be a large business, a
Mm,
corporation, right? Like have these departments built out. And so, you can't just sit there and envision it. You can kind of Google it and find some answers, but you need someone that's had this experience and has been able to do this. And like one of the things I lack and something that I'm developing and growing is leadership skills. I've
yeah.
never managed a massive team, starting to get there, right? And being able to show up every day and understand how to go about these like the dynamics between you and an employee and things like that. I just never understood it, right? I just treated everyone like they're my friend. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's not the best thing you could do as like a CEO, as a leader of an organization. And so yeah, I ended up hiring a coach, Christian. He's I think his company name is called Uncommon Elite. Super, super smart guy when it comes to just like being a intelligent operator. Like he taught me how to hire, recruit, and train and manage. And I think that was probably the most impactful thing I've learned this year. And I think it's gonna really carry our business forward. And I think that if you haven't had those past experiences, the best way to learn is to go pay someone and learn from themselves rather than
Yeah.
trying to figure it out on your own.
That's awesome. That's like such valid advice. I feel like it's key to have a network around you of just these individuals, not only a coach, but also just to be able to bounce off of individuals and talk about these things, because we live and breathe this world, and that's the only way. Like it's all I'm thinking about, this environment. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
critical. And yeah, I guess it's been a great podcast and just a really interesting talk with you. And I really do appreciate your time. Thanks for you actually coming on the show. I'd love to maybe end with one final question. What's next
Mhm.
for you and Leadbird over the next year coming into 2024?
Yeah, so I think in 2024 and just beyond, I think like our goal with Leadbird is I want to build an agency that is the biggest in the space when it comes to lead generation. I want when anyone thinks about lead gen, I want them to think about Leadbird. And I want to be able to have a very professional service around everything lead gen related, whether dependent like regardless of the channel. And that to me is what's super enticing. I just want to build and have a great team under me.
Mm,
To me, that's just like that's what's thrilling to me. It's like building more products, more services. And at the end of the day, solving the main issue with a lot of these like mid-market type companies that just haven't been able to crack outbound lead gen.
yeah,
And so that to me is like the goal for next year. More products, more services, all lead gen related.
nice. That's awesome. I have no doubt that you're going to smash it and become a lead. Well, you already are a leader in the space, but get even further across the TAM of the world, not one vertical. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Nick. It has been a pleasure. And I will drop your socials below so everyone can follow you. And yeah, great conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.